Jinho Park stood in the Great Hall of the Galactic Council and felt very small. The room was huge, built for beings much larger than humans. Above him, floating platforms held delegates from dozens of different worlds. Some had tentacles instead of arms. Others had scales that shined like metal. A few looked almost human, but their eyes were wrong. Too large or too many of them. Jinho was the human ambassador, and he had been doing this job for 3 years now. The other delegates still treated him like a child who had wandered into an adult meeting. When he spoke, they would look at each other with expressions that clearly said, "How cute. The monkey is trying to talk." Today's meeting was about trade routes through the Kepler sector. It should have been simple. Humans wanted to set up mining operations on 3 empty worlds. The planets had no life, no cities, nothing but rocks and metals that humans needed. But the Velthari delegate was making it complicated. "The human expansion must be controlled," said Ambassador Thekfar, his forearms moving in patterns that Jinho had learned meant disgust. "They spread too fast. They take too much." Jinho kept, his face calm even though he wanted to laugh. Humans had been in space for only 50 years. They had colonies on 12 worlds. The Velthari Empire controlled over 3,000 star systems. But somehow 12 human colonies were too many. "Honored delegates," Jinho said, standing up. His voice echoed in the huge chamber. "We ask only for worlds that nobody wants. Empty rocks. We're not taking anything from anyone." A sound like grinding metal came from the platform above him. That was how the Krexani laughed. "Empty rocks, today," said their delegate. "But what happens when you want more, when you decide our worlds look nice too?" Jinho had heard this argument many times. The galaxy was afraid of humans, but not because humans were strong. They were afraid because humans learned fast. Too fast, according to most aliens. When humans first reached the stars, they had ships. That barely worked. Human technology was primitive compared to races that had been building spaceships for millions of years. But humans had something else. They looked at alien technology and understood it quickly. They took ideas and made them better. In 50 years, human ships went from barely flying to being almost as good as ships built by civilizations that were ancient when Earth was still forming. The meeting went on for hours. Jinho presented his case again and again. The humans just wanted to mine some empty worlds. They would follow all the rules. They would pay the proper taxes to the Galactic Council. They would not bother anyone. But the answer was always the same. The expansion was happening too fast. Humans needed to slow down. Maybe in 100 years they could apply again. While Jinho was dealing with politicians, Mira Kim was digging in the dirt on a world far away. Kepler 442b was one of the worlds that humans wanted to mine. It was a dead planet, all red rocks and empty sky, perfect for digging up the rare metals that human technology needed. Mira was not a miner. She was a scientist who studied alien life. But there was no life on Kepler 442b, so she was not sure why she was there. Her boss had told her to look around, just in case. "You never know what you might find," he had said. What she found was very strange. The rocks on Kepler 442b were old, but not as old as they should be. When Mira tested them, she discovered that someone had been on this world before. A long time before. Maybe 100,000 years ago. She found the first carved stone near the mining site. It was covered in symbols that looked familiar, but she could not read them. She called her team over to help dig. What they found made her forget all about mining. It was a wall, then another wall, then a whole building buried under thousands of years of dust and rock. The building was made from stone that was harder than diamond, carved with symbols that hurt to look at. The symbols seemed to move when she was not looking directly at them. Mira had seen precursor ruins before. Every scientist in the galaxy had heard of the precursors. They were the race that came before all others. They had built amazing things, then disappeared without explanation. Nobody knew what happened to them. They left behind only ruins and warnings carved in stone. But these symbols were different. Mira had studied precursor writing for years. She could read the basic symbols, and what she read on this wall made her blood turn cold. The symbols told a story, a warning. It spoke of a race called the Starwalkers with endless fury. It said that when these Starwalkers woke up, even gods had to run away. The symbols warned future civilizations. Let none wake the children of the blue world. Mira sat in the alien ruins and tried to understand what she was reading. The blue world. Earth was blue. Children of the blue world. That meant humans. But this warning was 100,000 years old. Humans had not even learned to make fire 100,000 years ago. How could ancient aliens be warning about humans? She took pictures of every symbol. She made copies of the warning. Then she sent everything to Earth as fast as she could. This was too important to wait. Back on Nexus Prime, the Galactic Council meeting was finally ending. Jinho had not gotten what he came for. The humans would have to wait longer before they could mine the Kepler worlds. He was packing his papers when another human rushed into the chamber. It was Tai-Hyun Choi, one of the human scientists working on Nexus Prime. He looked scared and excited at the same time. "Ambassador Park," he said, breathing hard. "You need to see this message from Kepler 442b. Dr. Kim found something about humans." Jinho looked at the data on Tae-Hyun's tablet. The symbols were clear, even if their meaning was not. A warning about Starwalkers, about the children of the blue world, about humans. "This doesn't make sense," Jinho said. "Humans weren't even spacefaring 100,000 years ago." "That's what Dr. Kim thought too," Tae-Hyun said. "But the carbon dating is clear. These symbols are older than human civilization. Someone was warning about us before we even existed." Around them, the alien delegates were leaving the chamber. They talked among themselves in languages that sounded like music or grinding stone or breaking glass. None of them paid attention to the two humans looking at an old warning. If they had been paying attention, they might have asked questions. They might have wondered why ancient aliens would warn about humans. They might have been more careful about what they did next. But they were not paying attention. To them, humans were just another young race that needed to be controlled. Just another species that had to learn its place in the galaxy. The warning sat in human databases, waiting for someone to understand what it really meant. Waiting for someone to ask the right questions. The galaxy was about to find out why ancient civilizations had been afraid of humans. But not yet. For now, the warning was just words on old stones. For now, humans were still the newcomers who had to follow the rules. For now, the galaxy felt safe. Captain Do-Yun Lee was drinking coffee when the alarm started screaming. He was on the bridge of Defense Station Sol 1, orbiting above New Sol Colony. It was supposed to be a quiet morning. The colony below was peaceful, with 2 million humans living and working on the green world they had made home. Children were going to school. Adults were heading to their jobs. Nobody expected war. The first thing Do-Yun saw on his screens was ships, hundreds of them, dropping out of hyperspace like angry wasps. They were big ships, with weapons that could crack planets. He had never seen so many warships in one place. "Sir," said his communications officer, a young woman named Jisoo, "they're not responding to our calls. They won't identify themselves." Do-Yun knew who they were. The ships had the markings of the hegemony, the alliance of 6 alien races that controlled most of the galaxy. But he had to ask anyway. It was the rules. "This is Captain Lee of Earth Defense," he broadcast on all frequencies. "Unknown ships, you have entered human space without permission. Please state your business." The answer came in the form of energy beams. The alien ships opened fire without warning. Do-Hyun's station shook as weapons hit their shields. Red lights flashed everywhere. "Shields at 60%, someone shouted. "They're targeting the orbital platforms." Do-Hyun looked at his screens and felt sick. The aliens were not just attacking his station. They were firing on everything: mining platforms, communication satellites, even the small ships that carried families between the colony and the orbital cities. "Get me a line to the surface," Do-Hyun ordered. "Tell them to start the evacuation." But it was too late. As he watched, beams of light fell from the sky like deadly rain. They hit the capital city of New Seoul Colony and turned buildings into glass. They hit the farms outside the city and burned everything green. They hit the schools and the hospitals and the homes where families were eating breakfast. So-min Choi was in her engineering lab when the beams started falling. She was working on a new design for water purifiers, something that would help the farmers grow more food. Through her window, she could see her daughter's school in the distance. The beam hit the school first. One moment it was there, a building full of children learning about the galaxy. The next moment it was gone, turned into burning dust that drifted on the wind. So-min ran toward the window, screaming her daughter's name. But another beam was already falling toward her building. The last thing she saw was the face of her husband, Tae-hyun, in a picture on her desk. He was off-world, delivering supplies to a mining station. He would never see her again. The lab disappeared, in light and heat. On his station above the dying world, Do-Hyun fought back with everything he had. But his weapons were meant to stop pirates and smugglers, not a full battle fleet. His energy beams hit the alien ships and barely scratched their armor. "Sir, we're getting a message from the lead ship," Jisoo said. "Put it through." The alien who appeared on the screen had too many teeth and eyes like black holes. When it spoke, its voice sounded like breaking glass. "Human vessel, you will surrender. Now, your resistance is pointless. This is an illegal attack on a peaceful colony," Do-Hyun said. "We are not at war with the hegemony." The alien made a sound that might have been laughter. "You are now. Surrender your station and we will kill you quickly." Do-Hyun looked around his bridge. His crew was young, most of them born on New Seoul. They were watching their home world die, and they were angry. He could see it in their faces. "No," he said. The alien's expression did not change. "Then you will die slowly." More ships targeted his station. The shields failed. Hull breaches opened like flowers of fire. Half his crew was dead in seconds, but Do-Hyun was still alive, and his station still had weapons. He targeted the biggest alien ship and fired everything he had. His nuclear missiles hit their target and bloomed into tiny suns. When the light faded, the alien ship was damaged but still flying. "Sir," Jisoo said. She was bleeding from a cut on her forehead, but she was still at her post. "We've got maybe 5 minutes before they break through to the reactor." "Can we get a message to Earth?" Do-Hyun asked. "Yes, sir. One burst transmission before they cut us off." Do-Hyun thought about what to say. How do you tell a whole planet that one of their colonies is dying? How do you explain that the galaxy has decided humans are too dangerous to live? Send this message, he said. New Sol colony is gone. 2 million dead. The hegemony attacked. Without warning. Tell Earth. They made their choice. The message went out just as another wave of energy beams hit the station. This time, they reached the reactor. Admiral Yuna Song was in a meeting when the message arrived at Earth Defense Command. She was discussing supply routes with her staff, normal military business. Then an aide ran into the room with a tablet and a face white with shock. "Admiral," the aide said, "you need to see this. It's from New Sol." Yuna took the tablet and read the message. Then she read it again. Then she watched the attached video files that showed alien ships burning a human world. The room went very quiet. "How many survivors?" Yuna asked. "None, ma'am. We're not picking up any signals from the surface. The orbital platforms are gone, too." Yuna had been a soldier for 30 years. She had seen war and death and suffering, but she had never seen anything like this. The aliens had not just attacked a military target. They had killed everyone. Men, women, children, even the animals in the farms. "Get me a line to the Galactic Council," she said. The call took an hour to go through. When it did, the alien who answered seemed bored. "Admiral Song, we have heard about the unfortunate incident at New Sol. The hegemony has expressed regret for the accident." Accident? Yuna's voice was very calm, which was more dangerous than if she had been shouting. "They destroyed an entire colony. 2 million civilians. The hegemony reports that your colony was building illegal weapons. They were forced to respond to protect galactic security." Yuna laughed, and it was not a nice sound. "That's impossible. New Sol was a farming colony. They grew food and purified water. The only weapons they had were hunting rifles." Nevertheless, the hegemony's actions were justified under galactic law. However, they are willing to discuss terms to prevent future misunderstandings. "What kind of terms?" "Humanity will accept protectorate status under the hegemony. Your expansion will be limited to your current 12 worlds. Your military will be reduced to system defense only. In exchange, there will be no more unfortunate accidents." Yuna ended the call without answering. Within an hour, every human colony had received the same message. "Accept slavery or die." President Hyunwoo Nam called an emergency session of the Earth government. Representatives from all the human worlds gathered in the Great Assembly Hall in Geneva. They came in person or by hologram, but they all came. This was too important for anyone to miss. "The hegemony has given us a choice," President Nam said to the assembly. "Become their slaves or face extinction. They believe they have shown us what happens to humans who resist." "What are you going to tell them?" asked the representative from Alpha Centauri. President Nam was quiet for a long moment. Then he smiled, and it was the same kind of smile that Yuna Song had shown. "I'm going to remind them of something they seem to have forgotten." The broadcast went out on every frequency, to every world where humans lived. It also went to the Galactic Council and to every alien civilization that was listening. President Nam stood behind a simple podium with the flag of Earth behind him. He looked like a mild-mannered politician, but his words were steel. "Citizens of the galaxy," he began. "Today, the hegemony committed an act of genocide against the human colony of New Sol. 2 million innocent people died. Men, women, and children were murdered without warning, without cause, without mercy. He paused and looked directly into the camera. The hegemony believes this will make us surrender. They believe we will accept slavery to avoid death. They have forgotten something important about humans. We are the species that climbed to the top of our world's food chain, not because we were the strongest or the fastest. We made it because we are too stubborn to give up. Another pause. When he spoke again, his voice was quieter, but somehow more frightening. You have mistaken our diplomacy for weakness. You have mistaken our patience for cowardice. You wanted to see what humans do when we are truly threatened. Now you will learn. The broadcast ended. For a moment, the galaxy held its breath. Then humanity went to war. 3 months after New Sol burned, something strange started happening across the galaxy. Human colonies went dark, not destroyed, just silent. Their signals stopped. Their ships disappeared from trade routes. Even the human embassy on Nexus, Prime, closed its doors one morning and never opened them again. Commander Vextar of the Dominion fleet stood on the bridge of his flagship and stared at empty space. His sensors showed nothing where the human mining station should be. Yesterday, there had been a small facility here with 50 humans working to extract rare metals. Today, there was nothing but rocks and silence. "Search the system again," he ordered his crew. "Sir, we have searched 3 times. There are no ships, no stations, no humans. They are gone." Vextar's 4 eyes narrowed. "Ships that large do not just disappear. Find them." But they could not find anything. It was as if the humans had never been there at all. The same thing was happening all across human space. Colonies that had been there for decades were suddenly empty. Ships that should have been carrying trade goods were nowhere to be found. Even human diplomats vanished from alien worlds, leaving behind only empty rooms and questions. The hegemony had expected the humans to fight back. They had prepared for attacks on their military bases. They had strengthened their defenses and moved their fleets into position. What they had not expected was for the humans to simply disappear. Dr. Jiwon Ryu was not supposed to exist. According to official records, she had died in a transport accident 6 months before the attack on New Sol. In reality, she was working in a laboratory that was not on any map, building weapons that were not in any treaty. The laboratory was hidden inside an asteroid in the Vega system. From the outside, it looked like a mining operation. Inside, it was something much more dangerous. Human scientists were taking apart alien technology and rebuilding it in ways that made no sense to anyone but humans. "The Prometheus drive is ready for testing," Jiwon told her team. They were standing in front of a ship that looked wrong. It was too smooth, too curved, like it had been grown instead of built. "Who wants to try it first?" Minho Park raised his hand. He was an engineer who had been working on the project for 2 years. He understood the theory, even if it scared him. "I'll do it." "Remember," Jiwon said, "this is not faster than light travel. This is something completely different. You are not moving through space. You are folding space around you." Minho nodded and climbed into the test ship. The Prometheus drive was based on precursor technology that humans had found on dead worlds. But humans had done something that no other race had managed in 1,000,000 years. They had figured out how to improve it. The test ship vanished, not flew away, vanished. One moment it was there, the next moment it was gone. No flash of light, no sound, nothing. The space where the ship had been was empty. Then it appeared again, but in a different place. It was now floating outside the asteroid, a distance that should have taken 10 minutes to travel. Minho's voice came over the radio, excited and terrified. "It works! I was there, then I was here. No time passed. The space just folded." Jiwan smiled. It was not a nice smile. "Begin mass production. We have a war to win." The hegemony found out about human capabilities the hard way. A supply convoy carrying weapons to the front lines simply disappeared between one star system and another. No distress signal, no wreckage, no survivors. One day they were there. The next day they were gone, along with enough firepower to outfit a battle fleet. Narration was leading the team that took the convoy. She had been a teacher on New Sol before the colony burned. Now she was something else entirely. She and her team appeared out of nowhere in ships that should not have been able to exist. They disabled the convoy's escorts in minutes, then vanished with their prizes before reinforcements could arrive. "Target their supply lines," Nari told her team over the radio. "The hegemony fights like they always have. Big fleets, big battles, everything by the book. But even the biggest fleet needs fuel and ammunition. Take that away, and they become sitting ducks." The strategy worked better than anyone had hoped. Human raiding parties appeared in systems that should have been impossible to reach. They struck fast and hard, then disappeared before the hegemony could respond. Unlike other galactic wars, the humans were not trying to capture territory. They were trying to make war too expensive for the hegemony to continue. Commander Sunho Kim proved that humans would do things that other species considered impossible. His ship had been damaged in a raid on a hegemony weapons depot. His engines were failing, his weapons were offline, and 3 enemy battleships were closing in for the kill. The hegemony ships called for his surrender. In any normal war, that would have been the end. A damaged ship against 3 healthy ones had no chance. But Sunho was not thinking about normal war. He was thinking about New Sol, about 2 million dead humans, about children who would never grow up because the hegemony had decided that humans were too dangerous to live. "All crew to escape pods," he ordered. "Launch immediately." "Sir, what about you?" asked his second in command. "I'm going to show them what happens when you hurt our families." Sunho waited until his crew was safely away. Then he turned his ship toward the largest enemy vessel and pushed his failing engines to maximum power. The ship accelerated toward the speed of light, becoming a missile made of metal and fury. The hegemony ships tried to stop him. They fired everything they had. But Sunho's ship was small and fast, and he was not trying to survive. He was trying to take as many enemies with him as possible. The collision was visible from 3 star systems away. When the light faded, both ships were gone, vaporized, turned into atoms that would drift through space forever. The other 2 hegemony ships retreated immediately. Word of Sunho's sacrifice spread through both human and alien space. The aliens were horrified that anyone would do such a thing. Humans were inspired. If one man in a damaged ship could take out a battleship, what could a whole fleet do? The hegemony was starting to understand that they had made a mistake. Humans did not fight like other species. Most galactic civilizations had rules about war. They tried to minimize casualties. They avoided hitting civilian targets. They accepted surrender when it was offered. Humans had no such rules. They hit anything that helped the enemy war effort. They did not accept surrender from anyone who had participated in genocide. They fought like their entire species would, die if they lost. Because that was exactly what would happen. The war that was supposed to end human expansion had turned into something else entirely. Human technology was advancing at a speed that scared even human scientists. Ships that had been impossible to build last year were rolling off production lines this year. Tae-hyun Choi, the engineer who had lost his wife on New Seoul, was working on something that would have been considered magic a few years earlier. He was building ships that could phase in and out of reality, weapons that could ignore shields by firing from parallel dimensions. "We're breaking the laws of physics," he told Dr. Jaewon Ryu during one of their meetings. "Good," she replied. "The laws of physics are what killed my colony. If we have to break them to get justice, then that's what we'll do." The hegemony tried to negotiate. They sent messages to Earth offering terms. They would withdraw from human space. They would pay compensation for New Seoul. They would sign treaties promising that nothing like this would ever happen again. The answer from Earth was always the same: no. Not no, but we can discuss other terms. Not no unless you do this. Just no. Admiral Yuna Song explained the human position to a gathering of her officers. "They killed 2 million civilians because they thought we would be too scared to fight back. They were wrong. Now they want to stop fighting because they realize they can't win easily. They are wrong about that, too." "What do we want?" asked one of her captains. "We want them to surrender completely. We want their governments to fall. We want everyone who ordered the attack on New Seoul to face trial for genocide. We want to make sure that no alien government will ever think that attacking humans is a good idea. And if they won't agree to that?" Yuna's smile was cold as space. "Then we keep fighting until they change their minds. Or until there's nobody left to change their minds." The hegemony was learning what the precursors had discovered 100,000 years ago. Humans were not just another species. They were something different, something that could adapt to any threat, overcome any obstacle, and never, ever give up. The war was far from over, but the outcome was no longer in doubt. Humanity had awakened, and the galaxy would never be the same. 3 years had passed since New Seoul burned, and the war was not going the way the hegemony had planned. What was supposed to be a quick lesson for upstart humans had turned into a nightmare that consumed resources faster than they could be replaced. Fleet Admiral Karthek stood in the command center of Hegemony Central and stared at reports that made no sense. Human ships were appearing in systems that should have been impossible to reach. Their weapons were ignoring shields that had protected hegemony fleets for thousands of years. Worst of all, humans seemed to be learning from every battle, getting stronger while the hegemony got weaker. "Sir," said his aide, a nervous young officer whose species had served the Dominion for centuries, "the supply situation is becoming critical. We've lost 60% of our transport fleet in the last month alone." Karthek wanted to ask how that was possible. The hegemony had the largest fleet in the galaxy. They controlled the major trade routes. They had weapons and technology that should have made them unstoppable. But the humans were not fighting by the rules that had governed galactic warfare for millions of years. "What about the new weapon?" he asked. "The biological agent?" "Doctor, Velnari says it will be ready soon. Another week, maybe 2. Karthek nodded. The bioweapon was their secret project, something that would target human DNA specifically. It would kill every human it touched while leaving other species unharmed. It was the perfect solution to the human problem. If only they could find enough humans to test it on. Gayung Lee was very good at her job, which was fortunate because her job was extremely dangerous. She was a human intelligence agent working deep behind enemy lines, pretending to be a traitor from a neutral world. Her fake identity documents said she was from Kepler 438c, a planet where the local species looked almost human if you did not look too closely. The hegemony intelligence officers who processed her papers saw what they expected to see: another alien merchant trying to make money from the war. They did not notice that her DNA scans had been carefully altered, or that her ship contained surveillance equipment that was decades ahead of anything they had ever seen. Ga-Young had been living on Hegemony Central for 6 months, gathering information and sending it back to human command. She had learned about supply routes, fleet movements, and secret weapons projects. Today, she had learned about something that made her blood run cold. The bioweapon was real, and they were planning to test it on Terra Nova. Terra Nova was humanity's agricultural center, a green world where 50,000 humans grew food for the rest of human space. It was not a military target. It had no weapons, no defenses, nothing, but farms and families. The perfect place to test a weapon designed to kill humans. Ga-Young sent her report immediately, using a quantum communication device that the hegemony could not detect or intercept. Then she began planning her escape. If the hegemony discovered what she really was, they would do things to her that were worse than death. But first, she had one more job to do. Dr. Jae-Won Oh was working late in his laboratory when the priority message arrived. He was part of the team developing new weapons for the human war effort, but his project was different from the others. While other scientists were building better guns and faster ships, Jae-Won was working on something that should not have been possible. He was trying to break the barriers between dimensions. The theory was based on precursor technology, but humans had taken it far beyond anything the ancient aliens had imagined. If Jae-Won was right, it would be possible to build weapons that fired from parallel universes, ships that could exist in multiple dimensions at once, and defenses that could not be penetrated because they were not entirely in this reality. Thou, message from Ga-Young changed everything. A bioweapon that targeted human DNA, a test planned for Terra Nova, the hegemony's final solution to the human problem. Jae-Won looked at his prototype dimensional manipulator and made a decision that terrified him. The device was not ready. The safety tests were not complete. Using it might tear holes in reality itself. But Terra Nova had 50,000 people, including his sister and her children. He activated the emergency communication system and sent a message to Admiral Yuna Song. "I need to speak with Fleet Command. Immediately. I have something that can end this war." Seo Moon was reviewing crop reports when the alarm started screaming. She was the colonial administrator for Terra Nova, responsible for making sure that 50,000 people had everything they needed to live and work on the agricultural world. It was a good job, peaceful and important. Terra Nova fed the human, colonies that were too rocky or too cold to grow their own food. The alarms meant incoming ships. But that was not unusual. Terra Nova received regular supply runs from Earth and the other human worlds. Seowa checked her schedule and frowned. "No ships were expected today." "Administrator Moon," called her assistant from the communication center. "We're receiving a message from Admiral Song on Earth. Priority 1. Seowa took the call in her office. Admiral Song's face appeared on the screen, and Seowa could see immediately that something was very wrong. The Admiral looked like she had not slept in days. "Seowa, you need to evacuate Terra Nova immediately. We have intelligence that the hegemony is planning to test a bioweapon on your world." "A bioweapon? But we're not a military target, we just grow food." "That's exactly why they chose you. They want to see how well their weapon works on a large human population." Sayoa felt sick. How long do we have? Our intelligence suggests they'll arrive within hours. I'm sending every ship we can spare, but they might not get there in time. We can't evacuate 50,000 people in a few hours. We don't have enough ships. Admiral Song was quiet for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice was very soft. Do what you can. Save who you can. And Sayoa. If the worst happens, make sure we have a record of it. The galaxy needs to see what the hegemony is willing to do. The evacuation began immediately. Ships that were designed to carry grain and vegetables were hastily converted to carry people. Families packed what they could and ran to the spaceports. But there were not enough ships, and there was not enough time. When the hegemony fleet arrived, 30,000 humans were still on Terra Nova. The bioweapon was delivered by atmospheric bombs. They fell from the sky like deadly rain, releasing clouds of engineered viruses that spread on the wind. The weapon was designed to be painless, but that was a lie. Sayoa watched through her office window as people in the streets began to collapse. Their bodies failing as the virus attacked their DNA. She activated the colony's recording system and began to speak. Someone needed to witness what was happening. Someone needed to remember. This is Colonial Administrator Sayoa Moon, Terra Nova. Colony. The hegemony has deployed a biological weapon against our civilian population. People are dying in the streets. Children are dying in their parents' arms. The virus reached her building. Sayoa felt it when it entered her bloodstream, a burning sensation that spread through her body like fire. But she kept talking. The weapon targets human DNA specifically. It's designed to kill our entire species. This is not war. This is genocide. If anyone receives this message, remember that we did not surrender. Remember that we never gave up. Remember. The recording ended when Sayoa collapsed at her desk. But the message had already been transmitted to every human world, every alien government, and every neutral species that would listen. The galaxy watched 50,000 humans die in agony, and the galaxy realized that the hegemony was willing to do anything to win. That night, Fleet Admiral Kang Min-jon emerged from the shadows where he had been waiting for 3 years. His ships were different from anything that had been seen before. They moved through space like ghosts, appearing and disappearing at will. Their weapons fired from parallel dimensions, ignoring shields and armor as if they did not exist. Kang Min had been one of the human officers who argued for restraint when the war began. He had believed that showing mercy would encourage the aliens to negotiate. The bioweapon attack on Terra Nova changed his mind. No more mercy, he told his fleet commanders. No more holding back. They want to see what humans are capable of when we stop pretending to be civilized. Let's show them. The first target was the Hegemony Research Station where the bioweapon had been developed. Kang Min's ships appeared without warning and destroyed the entire facility in minutes. Then they moved to the next target. And the next, Dr. Velnari, the scientist who had created the bioweapon, died when Kang Min's fleet found his personal laboratory. His last words were a question. How did they find us? We're in a different dimension. The answer was simple. Humans had learned to hunt in multiple dimensions at once. The hegemony tried to surrender after they lost their 5th research station. They sent messages offering peace, promising to stop using the bioweapon, begging for mercy. President Hyun-woo Nam, who had been replaced by someone much harder, gave the same answer that humans had been giving for 3 years. No, the war was not over. But now everyone knew how it would end. The hegemony had crossed a line that should never be crossed. They had tried to exterminate the human species. Now they would learn why ancient civilizations had written warnings about humans. They would learn why the precursors had fled to the edge of the galaxy. The war ended not with a great battle, but with silence. Supreme Admiral Yoonji Kim stood on the bridge of her flagship, looking down at the homeworld of the Dominion. The planet was green and blue, beautiful from orbit. Cities covered the continents, in geometric patterns that spoke of millions of years of civilization. It should have been defended by the most powerful fleet in the galaxy. But there were no ships in orbit, no defense platforms, no weapons pointed at the human fleet. The planet was undefended because there was nobody left to defend it. Life signs? Yoonji asked her sensor officer. Minimal, Admiral. Maybe a few thousand scattered across the whole planet. The cities are empty. The Dominion leadership had fled. When they realized that human ships could appear anywhere, at any time, in any dimension, they had abandoned their homeworld and run to the edge of the galaxy. They had left behind everything they had built over millions of years of history. Send. A message to all hegemony worlds, Yoonji ordered. Tell them the war is over. Tell them to send representatives to Nexus Prime for surrender negotiations. But there was nobody left to negotiate with. The hegemony had collapsed, not because humans had destroyed their fleets, but because their leaders had realized that fighting humans was impossible. You cannot defeat an enemy that can appear in your bedroom while you sleep. You cannot win against ships that exist in multiple dimensions at once. The other alien species that had supported the hegemony surrendered quickly. They had watched human technology advance from primitive rockets to dimensional manipulation in the space of 3 years. They had seen what happened to civilizations that tried to genocide humans. They wanted no part of that fate. Wanho Bay was the human diplomat who addressed the emergency session of the Galactic Council. The Great Chamber was half empty. Many species had fled when they heard that humans were coming. Those who remained sat in terrified silence as Wanho walked to the center of the room. He was not like the old human ambassadors who had begged for permission to mine empty worlds. Wanho carried himself like a man who knew that his species now controlled the fate of the galaxy. Because they did. Honored delegates, Wanho began, his voice echoing in the vast chamber. The war is over. The hegemony has been defeated. Their leadership has fled to the rim worlds rather than face justice for their crimes. A delegate from the Velthari Empire raised one of his 4 arms. What? What do humans want from us? Wanho smiled, and it was not entirely pleasant. We want to make sure that what happened to New Sol and Terra Nova never happens again, to anyone. The galaxy will operate under new rules now. What rules? Asked another delegate, her voice barely a whisper. Simple ones. No genocide, no slavery, no conquest of peaceful worlds. Any species that breaks these rules will be dealt with by human forces. And if we refuse? Wanho's smile disappeared. Look around this chamber. Half the delegates have already fled rather than face us. The hegemony, which ruled most of the galaxy, abandoned their homeworlds rather than fight us. Do you really want to find out what happens if you refuse? The chamber fell silent. Everyone understood. Humans were not asking for permission. They were stating facts. The new galactic order was not human supremacy. It was human protection. Any species that wanted to live in peace was welcome to do so. Any species that wanted to conquer, enslave, or exterminate others would face the consequences, and everyone had seen what those consequences looked like. Ji-hyun An made the discovery. That explained everything. She was a xenoarchaeologist working on the precursor ruins that Mira Kim had found on Kepler 442b. For years, she had been translating the symbols that warned about starwalkers with endless fury. Now she had found the complete record. The story was written in stone that was harder than diamond, carved by beings that had lived when the galaxy was young. It told of a cycle that repeated across cosmic time. A species would arise that combined intelligence with absolute determination. They would spread to the stars and live in peace with their neighbors until someone attacked their families. Then they would become something else, something that ancient civilizations learned to fear. The precursors had not been warning about humanity's potential. They had been writing history. "It's happened before," Ji-hyun told President Taeyang-ko during their meeting in the New Human capital on Nexus Prime. "Humans spread to the stars once before, millions of years ago. They built a great civilization, made friends with other species, tried to live in peace. What happened to them? The same thing that almost happened to us. Their allies betrayed them, tried to wipe them out because they were afraid of human potential. But humans survived. Some escaped back to Earth. The civilization fell, but the species endured." President Ko was quiet for a long moment. "And now we're back. Now we're back. The galaxy forgot the lesson, so we had to teach it again." The new galactic government was called the Terran Concordat, but it was not a human empire. Earth was the capital, but representatives from hundreds of species served in the government. The rules were simple and fair. The enforcement was absolute and terrifying. Species that wanted to trade, explore, and build were welcomed with open arms. Species that wanted to conquer were met by human fleets that could appear from parallel dimensions without warning. The galaxy learned to be peaceful very quickly. Captain Minji Han was chosen to lead the first joint exploration mission beyond the galactic rim. Her ship carried representatives from 12 different species, all working together to explore the unknown regions of space. It was the kind of cooperation that had been impossible under the old system, where strong species dominated weak ones. "Contact. Ahead," called her sensor officer. A Velthari named Kethnor, who had volunteered for the mission. "Unknown ship. Alien configuration." Minji smiled. First contact with a new species was always exciting. Under the old galactic order, it had usually meant conquest or slavery for whoever was weaker. Under the new system, it meant potential new friends. "Open a channel. Let's see if they want to talk." The alien ship was small and clearly damaged. When communication was established, the beings inside were desperate and afraid. They were refugees from a species called the Krathven, fleeing from their homeworld after a civil war. In the old galaxy, refugees like this would have been ignored or enslaved. Under the Terran Concordat, they were rescued and given a new home, on a peaceful world where they could rebuild their civilization. "This is what we fight for," Minji told her mixed crew as they watched the refugee ship dock with their vessel. "Not conquest, not empire, just the right for everyone to live in peace." The galaxy was not perfect under human protection. There were still conflicts, still problems, still species that tested the boundaries of the new rules. But genocide was a thing of the past. Slavery was extinct. Conquest was met with swift and overwhelming response. And deep in the archives of a dozen worlds, scholars studied the precursor warnings and finally understood their meaning. The Starwalkers with endless fury were not conquerors or destroyers. They were protectors. They were the species that refused to let evil triumph no matter what the cost. The galaxy now lived under the oldest rule, finally enforced. Do not cross humans, because humans never forget. They never forgive genocide. And they never, ever give up. The cycle was complete. Peace had been restored. And if anyone in the galaxy was tempted to break that peace, they only had to look at the empty cities of the Dominion homeworld to remember what happened to those who tried. The children of the blue world were watching, and they would always be watching. In the end, that was enough. The galaxy learned to be good because the alternative was facing humanity's wrath. And as the years passed and new species joined the Terran Concordat, they learned something else. Humans were not just protectors, they were teachers. They showed the galaxy what it meant to never give up, to stand up for what was right, to protect the innocent no matter what the cost. The galaxy was a better place with humans in it, even if it had taken a war to prove it. Taeyang. Ko's final speech as president was broadcast to every world in the Concordat. He stood in the same chamber where the Galactic Council had once dismissed human requests, but now the chamber belonged to a government that protected everyone. We did not choose this responsibility, he said to the gathered representatives. It was forced upon us by those who thought genocide was an acceptable tool of policy. But we accept it willingly. As long as humans exist, the galaxy will know peace. He paused and looked around the chamber at species that had once been enemies, now working together for a common cause. We are not your rulers. We are not your masters. We are your guardians, and we will never let anyone hurt our family again. The applause lasted for 10 minutes. And in that moment, every being in the chamber knew that the galaxy was finally safe. Because humans were watching, and humans never stopped watching.